Welcome to Denver Startup Week. I'm Tammy Dorr, President and CEO of the Downtown Denver Partnership and co-chair of Denver Startup Week. This year marks the 10-year anniversary of Denver Startup Week. DSW has been the catalyst for lots of change over the past decade. And this week, we're coming together to celebrate the past and dream big for the future. We are able to bring Denver Startup Week to this community thanks to our 2021 sponsors. Thank you to our HQ and title sponsor, Amazon, and our title sponsors whose leadership makes this week come to life. Capital One Cafe, Downtown Denver Partnership, Fluid Truck, Hotel Engine, and WeWork. And our track sponsors who have made all of the great content you're hearing today possible, our founder track sponsor, Kickstart, growth track sponsor, Friday Health Plans, developer track sponsor, Quizlet, product track sponsor, Palantir, our designer track sponsor, Battery 621, and the Public Works. People track sponsor, Exactly, and Spotlight event sponsor, Strat Labs. Our headline event sponsors are bringing the excitement to the week. Thank you to B-Side Fund, Colorado Public Radio, Comcast, Coors Brewing, Denver Pavilions, Entrepreneurship at the University of Denver, JP Morgan Chase, Method, Moss Adams, Pi Insurance, Promontory Mortgage, Path, Southwest, Tattered Cover, and VF Venture Foundry. Finally, thank you to our partner and member sponsors, all listed on the screen. Please say thank you to these companies as you enjoy our hybrid Denver Startup Week. And don't forget, use the hashtag DenStartupWeek to share your experiences and moments of inspiration on social media. Have a great week.
Hello, I'm Sal Gentili, CEO of Friday Health Plans, and we're proud to sponsor the growth track this year at Denver Startup Week. We're a company that just entered a rapid growth phase, so we felt it was particularly appropriate. When my business partner and I started Friday Health Plans 5 years ago, we knew we wanted to create a company that catered to people who bought their own health insurance. The Affordable Care Act was just getting going, and we saw an opportunity to serve a brand new market of health insurance consumers. Independent consultants, startup groups, gig workers, service industry workers, designers, creators, and other independent professionals, like many of you here today. We knew that if we built a health plan that was simple to buy, easy to use, had great customer service, and most of all was affordable, we could compete against the big insurance plans who only focus on serving big companies. After spending 5 years getting into the Colorado market and completing a successful proof of concept, we successfully closed a $50 million round of growth funding earlier this year. We're now about to expand to 3 additional states later this year, hire more than 400 employees to support our growth, and eventually be in more than 10 states by 2025. I wish each of you good luck in your startup and growth pursuits. And as you think about your upcoming health insurance needs, I hope you consider fellow growing startup Friday Health Plans. Open enrollment starts November 1st. Check us out at FridayHealthPlans.com.
Hello everyone, welcome to Denver Startup Week. I'm Jake Cohen, the Growth Track Chair and member of the Denver Startup Week Organizing Committee. Thank you for joining us for the 10th anniversary of Denver Startup Week. At Denver Startup Week, we strive to make all of our sessions a space where attendees can connect, learn, and grow, regardless of age, gender identity, gender expression, race, ability, or sexual orientation. A special thank you to our sponsors for their support in helping us to keep Denver Startup Week free and accessible for all. Thank you for joining us and have a great week.
Alrighty, Steve, go ahead and jump on in. There we go. Have a great program.
Thank you. And good morning to everyone. Thank you to the Downtown Denver Partnership for putting on Denver Startup Week. 10 years, man, that is good stuff. I want to introduce myself. My name is Steve Collier. I'm with the Small Business Administration's Colorado District Office. My background is I'm a state public information officer as well as involved in economic development. And I'm going to be kind of your host for this panel on going global with all of our experts that are surrounding me or around the camera from a multitude of organizations that stretch the state involving in exporting and importing and international trade in general. So just a couple of rules of the road as we go through the different discussion blocks that we're going to cover today. As we go through each discussion block, we're going to ask that if you have questions specific to those discussions, just post your questions in the chat function and we will answer them at the end of each discussion block. So we'll collect them up and we'll go from there. And so what I'd like to do is go ahead and turn over a little introductions to each of these folks and let you know who they are and what organization they're with, and then we'll kick it off. I think we'll start with Patricia as she's to my left. So.
Hello, Steve. Thank you so much. And thanks everyone who's participating in Denver Startup Week. So I'm Patty Brewer. I'm with the Small Business Administration's Office of International Trade. And the Office of International Trade has 3 divisions. And the first one helps out with the STEP program, which Sophia will talk to you about in a few minutes. And then the second division within Office of International Trade can help you answer questions on how trade agreements affect your small business, like the US-Mexico-Canada agreement. How does that affect your small business? So we have a division specifically within the Office of International Trade to answer those questions. And then the third division of the Office of International Trade has individuals like me. There are 20 individuals stationed around the country who are here specifically to answer your small business questions on how to export and how to finance those exports. So thank you so much for being here today, and I look forward to hearing your questions.
All right, thank you, Patricia. And Sophia, to you at OEdit.
Thank you so much, and good morning to everybody. My name is Sofia Gonzalez Mayagoitia, and I'm here with the Colorado Office of Economic Development and International Trade. I'm the International Export Grant Manager within the office in our Global Business Development Division. And my responsibilities are to directly manage our export funds. And that includes the STEP grant, which I will be talking about mostly today, as well as our Advanced Industries grant and our Global Consultant Network Fund. So thank you so much for everyone who joined us today. We're really excited to share some of these resources with you all.
Outstanding. And to Tanya, who is with the World Trade Center here in Denver.
Thank you, Steve, and hello, everybody. Good morning. Welcome to our session. My name is Tanya Arndt, and I'm a director of a trade institute at WTC Denver. WTC Denver is a business network and services organization dedicated exclusively to the international business success of companies in Colorado and the surrounding Rocky Mountain region. We help companies to thrive on the global stage. We work with exporters and importers, companies of all sizes and all industries, and help with anything from a very small question to the turnkey solution. Thank you. I'm very excited to be on this panel.
Awesome. And last but not least, Ms. Suzette Nickel with the U.S. Commercial Service.
Yeah, good morning. Suzette Nickel. I'm the director at the U.S. Commercial Service office here in Denver. Our agency is funded under the U.S. Department of Commerce's International Trade Administration. And here in our office, we have international trade specialists who work primarily by industry segments. We are the export promotion and trade support agency for the U.S. government. We have over 80 offices throughout the U.S. and 170 in U.S. embassies and consulates around the world, approximately 1,500 trade professionals with the mission of working directly with U.S. small businesses to assist them in their international growth. We offer services ranging from foreign market assessments, working through international regulatory issues, licensing issues in other countries, how to identify and sign potential channel partners or distributors, how to get paid, how to ship, and so on. I like to tell companies it's the A to Z of exporting. Any issue that you have, you can bring to our office for assistance.
All right. So lots of stuff on the plate from each of these different organizations. Very glad to hear about these things. And so we're going to start talking about our first discussion, and that is the term is export counseling. So businesses that might come into any of these organizations and get counseled on how to either become an exporter or expand their maybe current exporting. So what we're going to do in this discussion block is go around the table, and we'd like to hear from each of your organizations on how would you define what export counseling is to your organization. And we will let's start with the World Trade Center.
Thank you, Steve. I would say, so when we think about the export counseling or export and import, again, because we serve both of those, I would divide into our counseling into 3 categories. Category 1 is the consulting services. And we have our free help desk. So anytime you have a question, you can just submit it online, or you can give us a call, as you can hear now, probably my phone. Different consulting projects. So those are specific for the company or specific project. We also do document services. So this is all in consulting services category. Our second category is education and training. And this is what I'm in charge of, and I'm very, very proud of the offerings that we have. We have 24 different trainings throughout the year, and those cover Incoterm, export documentation, international law and IP rights, import logistics, trade finance, and actually Patty Brewer is teaching part of that course for us as well. And we're offering that, so educational services we offer online, on demand, and virtual, live, and in person. We're also launching our Lunch and Learn webinars. So those will be coming every 2 weeks. So those on like a very, very specific how-to questions. And our third bucket or third category that I'm very excited about, it's called our Accelerator Programs, and we have 2 of them. One is the Global Trade Activator, and this is a 4-month program that helps you to develop your global go-to-market strategy. And this is where you go module by module, step by step, to really be ready. Well, think about this as a trainer at your gym, somebody who you have meetings on a weekly cadence to discuss your specific product and your specific company to the market that you want to access. And so the last one in that category is the Global Trade Activator for our immigrant entrepreneurs. And this is for immigrant entrepreneurs who are just starting their international business. So their business is global in their nature, and they're just starting. Maybe they haven't even started the business yet. So this is where they join us. And I'm so proud to say that we have 80 of them right now in the program.
Wow, that's outstanding. And one of the themes that I continue to hear there is that exporters or potential exporters, they're not alone. Like, you're constantly helping to aid them. And I know that each of these organizations on this panel are committed to the same. And so what I'd like to do is now go over, and I just keep saying OEDIT because it's a nice little 5 letters I put together versus that very long name. So Sophia, if you could explain for us OEDIT in the sense of export counseling and what you all bring to the table.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah, definitely. So I would say that OEDIT, in terms of the funding that I'm representing here today for exporting, we do a lot more, obviously, of the funding for those resources, but I'd like to talk about our global consultant network. So we have a wide variety of consultants across the globe. We have them in Asia, Latin America, in Europe. And so these consultants that we have available for any company in Colorado who applies through our STEP application can access their services. And so essentially what our consultants can offer are market entry services as well as in-country services. So market entry services might include market research reports, trying to identify a market that would be suitable for a company to begin exporting to, and helping with that research that oftentimes can be very time consuming and costly. And so what we do at OEdit within my division is that we have funds so that companies can access these services at no cost to them. Additionally, for the in-country services that our consultants can provide, they offer setting up meetings with potential partners. They can help with local translation. And as an example, we attended the Green Expo in Mexico City this last September. And our consultants in Mexico helped set up meetings for some Colorado companies. They helped with that translation and set up some product demonstrations for a company. So they offer.
Yeah, I'm sorry, folks. We're having a couple of little technical difficulties here with Sophia. Sophia, can you hear us? We will get her back, I promise. While we work on that, oh, Sophia, you there?
Yeah, sorry, I realized that you all couldn't hear me anymore.
Okay.
Can you tell me where I cut off?
We were, at least for me, I know I was hearing about the recent trade mission to Mexico and connecting businesses there. And I think if you could pick it up from there, that'd be great.
Yeah, definitely. So our consultants in Mexico provided some translation services at the trade show. They also set up some meetings for our companies to meet with potential buyers. And additionally, they help set up some product demonstrations for one of the companies to showcase their technology. So they really can provide a wide array of services, and it's tailored to whatever the company needs. So, and like I mentioned, it's at no cost to the companies that are applying.
And a lot of those resources are right here just within the state. But one of the themes that I know folks are going to hear throughout this call in the hour is a lot of the work that these organizations do in concert with one another. And that's why I'd like to go ahead and take it and let Suzette talk about the U.S. Commercial Service, because I know some of those same things that OEdit provides, there's some overlap because both the federal and the state levels work pretty seamlessly to provide those types of services. So Suzette, if you could talk about export counseling from your organization standpoint.
Yeah, sure. And I think that is important, Steve, to point out that some of what the audience is hearing is going to seem like overlap. And we don't want companies to assume that they can only work with one of these groups. We do work very closely together and kind of coordinate, sometimes even behind the scenes. But I would tell everyone in attendance that you should be familiar with all of the resources, because even if it sounds familiar, there's some nuances to what we do. So I'm just going to kind of talk through the process that we use for counseling companies, what we do in our office. I mentioned that we have international trade specialists assigned in our office. And so what happens when you call our office is we start with that assessment. Who are you? What markets are you looking at? What's the potential for your goods or services on a global scale? Is there demand? Are you getting demand? What are the needs? And from that, then we start talking about the strategy. So you would be assigned a trade specialist in our office, and they would help you work through that strategy. And that is a market for my service in Germany? Am I going to need to translate this product? Maybe you have a software product. Can it be delivered in English, or does it need to be in German? And we really start working through all of those factors. And again, this is where we see some of that kind of behind the scenes work, where we collectively work as a group to get the Colorado company to the finish line. And I say Colorado because we do have offices in other parts of the United States. So if you happen to be listening in from a different city, there could be an office in your city that could work with you. And so the counseling, the market intelligence, as Sophia mentioned, we do all types of matchmaking, trade missions, identify opportunities for government tenders in foreign markets, and how do you complete those documents in a timely manner. Education, trade mechanics, really that whole package of information. And on the foreign side, we hire local nationals to work on behalf of U.S. businesses within that U.S. embassy and consulate structure. So I think that's important for companies to realize. That's not Suzette in Denver Googling like how to do, what's the regulatory requirement for selling satellite to the European Space Command. You could do that yourself, right? These are actually on the ground individuals that are in that country that have experience, in-depth experience working on these types of trade issues. And so I think that that's really important to point out that none of us are doing this work in silo. It's a global community, and that we're really, fairly well connected to each other and in a lot of different ways to deliver that service. So.
Well, that was a glowing endorsement of Google, if I've ever heard one. So,
Yeah.
Forget about all those awesome relationships you all build with other foreign governments. So, well, that's great. And I might be a little biased, but Patricia is a coworker with the SBA. But Patricia, over to you as the last but not least for this discussion block. Export counseling from your standpoint.
My standpoint, export counseling is going to really focus on financing and getting you ready to request financing. So as we're talking, if I discover that you need to talk to Suzette about some market due diligence, or you might be a good candidate for the STEP funds, or maybe the World Trade Center is a good place for you to get some additional information, I will refer you to those organizations as well. But when you and I talk, when I talk to a small business, I'm really going to I need to understand what your financing need is. How much are you looking for? What are you looking to finance? Is it equipment? Is it a line of working capital? What is it that you need the money for? And then I'll help you understand what those financing options are. So the SBA has several export finance programs. Maybe one of those fits for you, or maybe one of the regular SBA programs fits better. Or maybe you can't come to the SBA. Maybe you just need to work with your lender to perfect your borrowing. So we talk through those options and what the criteria is for each. And when you're putting together your business plan, because you're going to need that as you request your financing from any lender, I'll help you go through that. I'll show you what needs to happen with that. I can review it for you. As a former underwriter for a bank, I understand extremely what those questions are going to be. So I can help you put that business plan together. And then I can work with you and your lender. If you're currently working with a lender, I can help you negotiate those conversations with them. If you don't have a lender, I can help you find one. So, my conversation is really going to focus on financing. And if you need other options, I'm going to pull some folks in from this network to help you out too.
Outstanding. So that's a pretty good roundabout explanation of where each of you all come from the export counseling standpoint. So thus far, I don't think we have any questions in regards to that yet. We'll give it just a second here if based on what folks have heard, if they have any questions thus far. And then if there are none, we'll just continue on into our next discussion block. So we'll just give that a moment, see if there's any questions. We have our wonderful moderator, Karen, behind the scenes, gathering those up for everyone. So, okay. I'm not seeing any yet. Now, if any questions do pop up, we'll certainly capture those. But we're going to move into our next discussion block. We know that a lot of the folks that are on the call today are interested in exporting. Maybe they've never exported before, but they're trying to gather information. You're trying to educate yourselves, which is great. And so we want to kind of give you a description, based on all the expertise that these folks have on kind of what is the evolution of an exporter? What does that look like? What is it from the using the term cradle to grave, if you will, from the beginning to the end of what a seasoned exporter might look like? So what I'd like to do is this time I'm going to start with Suzette at the Commercial Service. And if you can talk to us about what does the evolution of an exporter look like through the lens of your organization?
Oh, thanks, Steve. I think that what we see a lot, particularly with small businesses, is a company starts by getting a few or multiple online inquiries. So they're starting to gain see a lot of interest in their product. And they don't really know how to necessarily how to fulfill that interest or even how to do the due diligence. And so that's often a really good starting point, is having systems in place to address who's contacting us, why are they just fishing? Are they legitimate? We help companies understand how to screen some of that, and also before signing an agreements, we want them to do a due diligence. And oftentimes it could be someone they met at a trade show that they attended. Maybe they were at a big trade show in Las Vegas and they were approached by, buyers from Singapore. And, that kind of starts development of business and sales channels throughout Asia. And then I think that it often progresses to, what are we going to do in Asia? Can we look at other markets? And really getting to that point of understanding if their business is, actually scalable to that level. Do they have in-house expertise? How do they get the training? How do they get the knowledge to be an effective exporter? And managing some of those, some of them are complex. It's not insurmountable, but it does take more time, more effort, more resources to do international business. So the company has to be prepared for that. And then really, identifying solid sales channels, signing the right distributors, and then understanding how to effectively support those distribution channels so that they will grow your business in that market that they were selected for. And I think that, once companies get to a level, we have some clients that we work with that are new to export, and we have some we've worked with them in multiple markets over 20 years, and maybe they're in 30 countries now, but they're still looking to grow into new countries, or they've changed their business model a little and they've added new product lines, and then they're looking at an entire new sales channel. And so I think that the evolution is, if you think about it, it's always growth, always looking for the next opportunity, and then always figuring out, ways that you can get to that opportunity and the resources that are available to help you get there quicker and, save money in the process.
And I think that's a good point about, I always kind of look at it as kind of a rings on a tree. As you grow in your scope and your ability as an exporter, it's almost like you almost unlock the key to additional resources that exist as you get to different levels in your ability to export. So, I'll talking about those resources, I wanted to go ahead and pass it back to Sophia. And Sophia, from the state's perspective, what would you say is the evolution of an exporter from your all's vantage point?
Thank you, Steve. I think something that Suzette said is really important. The due diligence aspect is really important because companies really need to do their own research. Once they come to me to ask for funds, I think it's important that they've done the research to identify some potential markets, to sort of identify where their products might be most helpful, at least initially. Obviously, I mentioned the Global Consultant Network, and so that's going to be a really great resource for companies to really do more of that research and make sure that the market that companies have identified for their exports are the right fit. And then after that, once a market is identified, companies have done their research, they know, okay, I want to export this product to Mexico because of X, Y, and Z. Now what? And so what the STEP grant can help companies do is help them start off on that export journey, right? So the STEP grant helps cover any international business activity for small companies that employ less than 200 people within the company globally. And so essentially, what the STEP grant can help fund is airfare, hotel stays, marketing, translation, anything that will help that company get to that international market that they've identified, and help them succeed in establishing those connections, because I think that's going to be really important in terms of this evolution, is establishing those connections and meeting with those potential vendors, those potential partners face to face really is important, and that's why the STEP grant really helps fund those sort of activities. We also help fund website development so that these companies can improve their marketing to those target markets that they've identified. So I think the next step for companies after they've done their research and have identified those markets is putting themselves out there and really making those tweaks within their company that's going to make those partner meetings more successful and will help increase their outreach to that market.
Awesome. And, just as I'm kind of, I just like to take notes as we're going. And, you did talk about the due diligence aspect. And I know that each of the organizations here, and with the specificity, World Trade Center, I know does this as well. You talk about doing your due diligence, the market intelligence. And you can use the Google machine, as we alluded to earlier. But these organizations, each of you all, have your own experts on payroll that will do a lot of this groundwork for you in tandem. And so I think, Tanya, that is a great, I'm going to kick it off to you. I was going to kick it off to Patricia. I do apologize. I'm going to go ahead and take it to World Trade Center now, because if you can talk about how you all do that from the aspect of evolving an exporter and being able to counsel them, giving that due diligence, and talk about that angle.
Yes, thank you so much, Steve. Great question. I think due diligence is something that comes quite often from, it doesn't matter actually where you are on that path. But I did want to also kind of comment what Suzette and Sophia both said. I think that's exactly what we also see here in terms of the evolution of the exporter or the global business, is that typically what we start seeing is that we call it here internally as accidental international. So they will start meeting people, they get some orders, and so we start getting them, maybe it's a phone call, maybe it's a help desk question, maybe they will start coming to some of our networking events or some trainings. And this is where I think a lot of exporters and global businesses start understanding that there is I don't even know what I don't know. And I think this is that wow factor that we see from a lot of people who come through our services. And then they kind of said, oh, there is this also, and compliance, I also need to think about this. And also, I think this is where we partner a lot with everybody who's here on the panel, that there are also these resources, and there is another ocean of information that is available. But so due diligence is for sure, this is where they receive this, maybe they have order from China and they don't know, is this business legit? Is this the business that they can work with? We as a World Trade Center Association, we have 320 centers around the world and over 100 plus countries. So we also work with our network, but also using the same resources that we have here. Like we will also work with Suzette and Gold Key Service and things like this. So I think there is a lot of research, and we actually also have the whole class on due diligence and what people can do, even, because I think a lot of who's here probably attending a lean business, right? So you're a startup, so there is a lot of things you want to do yourself, and there is quite a lot that we can help with that as well. I think there's just one more thing that I did want to mention is, so as we see people start on their own, eventually we see how they want to be a little bit more intentional in their efforts. So for example, so that accelerator program that we have, this is where maybe they already sell in, 10, 15 countries, but those are just smaller orders, and they really want to be more intentional and strategic. And this is where they will join our accelerator program and really go through that process.
So as you mentioned, that accelerator program, at that point, you are in several countries at that point. And I like to call it a good, bad problem when you think about getting access to capital to support your exporting expansion. And when you get to that point, you're probably going to want to be talking to Patty at the SBA. Mm-hmm. So, Patty, if you can talk about from the evolution of an exporter, generally folks that are going to come through your door are probably quote unquote seasoned. They're probably doing maybe at least 1 to 2 countries that they're exporting, if not more. Can you talk about where your services come into play as someone has evolved in their exporting life?
Right. Thank you, Steve. So many times I will talk to companies or to prospects, and they don't even realize they are an exporter. So an exporter exports not only goods, but services are also considered exporters. So if you create a software, or if you are an engineering consultant and you're selling overseas, that's an export. So you are eligible to come and ask us these questions about how to improve your activities in the international market. And also there are 2 other types of exporters. There's a direct exporter and then an indirect exporter. So you've got the direct exporter, where I will sell directly to my foreign buyer. But then the indirect exporter is a company that sells to a US company, and then that US company sends that product overseas. So let's say, for example, I manufacture a component. I might manufacture a wheel, or I might manufacture brake pads, and I sell those items to John Deere or to some other larger company. They incorporate my product into their equipment, and that equipment is sold overseas. Since I manufacture those brake pads, I am an indirect exporter and I am an exporter. So I am eligible to request support from these folks. So it's the definition of exporter is often misunderstood and certainly requires some greater questions and some greater answers. But when an exporter comes into me, many times they are starting their company and they've worked in the international market before. They were either an international sales manager, or they understand how the international market focuses, and they have an idea for a market, for a product, and they want to sell that overseas. So they have a very strong experience. They know exactly what they need to do to get that product overseas. They just need the financing. So that's one type of exporter that I work with. And then I also work with a second type of exporter, which is a domestic seller. And now they are branching out into the international market. They've been domestic, they've been selling domestic, they are very successful with their domestic sales, but now they want to expand and they're starting to hit some other markets. They've either been contacted by foreign buyers, or they are reaching out to the other markets that they are getting a little bit of familiarity with because they've talked to Suzette or they've talked to Tanya. And so they know there's a market out there for their product. And, studies have shown that for companies that move into the international market, they are more resilient, they grow faster, and they have higher revenues. So the ability to grow from your domestic market into the international market helps you grow as a company.
Yeah, and we know that, and we do appreciate everyone providing information on kind of their background, on their businesses. We know a few of you provided your LinkedIn information, and so we see that there is a lot of folks on the call today that have a fintech background or IT. And to Patty's point, when the old school thinking of exporting is I could put it on a cargo ship and I send it overseas. Well, if you're getting a contract with a Canadian firm, for instance, with your software, you are exporting your intellectual property at that point. So yeah, the old notion of the traditional exporting, yeah, especially for those folks who are now beginning to get into it, definitely understand that what you may be doing, you may not even realize you're doing an export, but you are in fact doing that. And now we have a question to challenge the great minds that are on this call. So the question is from Lisa. I would be interested to understand any recommendations on global payment processors to both receive and make payments. Wiring is expensive, and so is Stripe. There must be a better way. To anyone on the panel, you are free to take that one. I know you're going to arm wrestle for it. So.
Yeah, I'm not sure that everybody's jumping up and down to answer that. And mostly, I would say that's going to be somewhat specific to what region or countries we're talking about. I think that would be a deeper dive with Lisa to understand, what they're targeting. And there's probably not one solution that's going to cover them for the whole world. And keep because in some cases you're still going to be faced with what are the legal requirements? Do I have to make payment in a specific country? When we're talking about collecting payment and things in Europe, we've got to be aware of the regulations around the Privacy Act. So I just think that's probably a bigger conversation than here, but definitely something we can look into on a deeper dive just directly with Lisa. So.
And she had a couple of follow-up comments regarding
So
I
mean, and I think that's exactly right. There are some solutions that are out there. Again, I think that some of it's going to be dependent on your country and setting up those legal kind of boundaries within where are the servers located, what can you collect, what kind of information can you collect in what location, and price point, right? Like how much business is happening that in a certain region that justifies a solution there. So be happy to talk to Lisa offline about that.
Sure, and I know there's different financial regulatory issues that change from country to country. I mean, it's nice with the EU in the sense that generally the entire EU conforms to the same standard, but when you start getting into places like Africa, that can change things. I wanted to see if there was anyone else on the call that might want to also provide feedback on that question before we move on to the next one.
I think I could just say, maybe I will not be able to answer the question exactly, but we definitely have experts and coaches on that. So I know we are working on trade finance class, and we are revamping it and making it more current. So I think, Lisa, again, if you also want to reach out to us, then we might be able to connect you with the right person in the network.
So the theme is Lisa, we're going to get your info and we're going to specifically follow up on that, and we'll work you to get you the answers that you're looking for. Not seeing any additional questions, so we are going to move on to the next panel. We want to respect everyone's time because we know that you've scheduled for an hour. So we're going to talk real quick about export funding programs. So each of the different organizations have some unique funding programs. We know that Sophia mentioned the STIP program. We have, of course, Accelerator coming from the World Trade Center. But I'd like for each of the panelists to take a couple minutes and talk about what are some of the financial programs that can help offset some of those costs to get into global markets, or at least get exposed to global markets. And this time, I'm going to go to Patricia over with the SBA. And Patty, if you could talk about those financial programs that you've kind of alluded to earlier. Unfortunately, you are muted, Patty.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I was brilliant. So anyway, the SBA has created 3 export finance programs for exporters to meet their different phases of their export life cycle. And so for most new exporters, the product that's most interesting is the Export Express. And that's a $500,000 lending program for companies who are new to exporting or they are pivoting to a new market. And the Export Express can either be set up as a term loan to help you purchase equipment or purchase real estate, or as a working capital line. So if you need to hire employees, set up lines with your suppliers, or if you need to set up just those operational cash that you need for your day-to-day in and out. And that's the Export Express. Now, as you grow in your exporting, so for example, once you start selling you have these recurring strategic buyers and they're buying from you on terms, then you might be interested in the Export Working Capital Program. And once you are an experienced exporter and you have so much demand from the international market that you cannot produce enough, the International Trade Loan can help you increase capacity. So if you need to install a new production line, add warehouses in, again, hire more employees, work on your supply chains, this International Trade Loan can help you do that. But for most new exporters, the Export Express is the perfect loan program for them. And one of the nice things about the Export Express is it's a fast loan program. So the lenders who are authorized to work under the Export Express, they have special permission from the SBA to approve transactions. So the lender decides, what forms you need to provide, what information you need to provide. The lender reviews everything and they decide yay or nay on this transaction. And then they let the SBA know we've approved this transaction. So it's a really nifty loan program. And if you have more questions about it, I'm happy to answer. But one of the nice things about Export Express is it works really well with the STEP grant program. And I'll cut off at that point.
Ooh, I saw you were planting some seeds. That was nice. And I do want to point out, just to give folks a little contextual piece to that with SBA Express, great example. Let's say you get an order from Indonesia for 100,000 widgets or something to that degree. But it's going to take at least 90 days to produce that if you don't also need to increase your workforce to meet that demand. And you're not going to get payment for 90 to 120 days until delivery. So that's a great example of where you can use the contract, the tender, to support a potential SBA Express loan to make up for what will be an expected revenue. But in the meantime, you need to be able to plus up your funds to support that demand. So just to give people a little context there. I want to go ahead and kick it over to Tanya at World Trade Center. And if you want to talk about some of those programs that you all bring to the table.
Yes, thank you. So this is where we work very closely with our strategic partners. For example, Sophia from OEDIT, we actually worked with OEDIT MBO program, minority business owned, and with scholarshiped companies. So it was free for them to go through our Accelerator program. And then at the end of the program, that 4-month period, they were able to receive some funds that they used to move their global initiatives forward, whatever the needs were. Like for different companies, it was different things, like translation was one of them and things like this. So there are definitely a lot of options available. Sometimes they come and go. So I think it's also ever evolving and ever changing. So yes.
Short, sweet, to the point. But one of the big words I heard there was free. So just so folks on the panel know, again, some of these programs, many of them are no cost because they're already supported. So please take advantage of them if you feel that that you would fit the requirements for it. So and that was a really great segue to Sophia. So Sophia, you could talk about, obviously, STIP is kind of a big rock funding program, but if you could talk about the different programs that OEDIT brings to the table that can help finance export startups or existing exporters.
Definitely. So I've mentioned STEP a lot, and in case I haven't said this before, it stands for the State Trade Expansion Program. And so these are federal funds that we apply to every year competitively. These funds are then allocated to the state to distribute. And so these are funds that are for companies that are new to exporting or for market expansion. And this grant is for smaller companies, anywhere from for a company that has less than 200 employees globally. And so STEP is really beneficial for any sort of international business activity that a company is taking on. And so I mentioned, obviously, those partner meetings, marketing, website services. And something I didn't mention is that STEP funding actually can also be used to attend trade shows, which I think is really beneficial activity for companies who are trying to export, because there are international trade shows all over the world in all the different sectors. And so OEDIT actually participates in a set number of these trade shows per year. And so we'll set up a booth at these trade shows and open up applications for Colorado companies to accompany us and participate within those trade shows. And so I want to take this opportunity to let everyone know on this call, if there are any medical device companies that are here with us today, we are attending the Arab Health Trade Show in Dubai in January, and our application for that is open until the 20th of October. And so we would pay all the participation fees for companies to attend Arab Health, and then they would also receive a stipend to attend that trade show.
Wow, that's a really great benefit. And I just want to point out for folks, when it comes to Colorado and STEP, this state consistently gets increases in the overall STEP amount. I believe one year the STEP grant doubled. And that's how much demand and how much work OEDIT is doing to put in for their grant submission. So these resources exist. A lot of times STEP can be kind of like the best kept secret for many people. I know in businesses that I've talked to, they're like, I've never heard of that. And then all of a sudden they're like, I had no clue that this was a thing. And a great example of one of those trade shows is like Hannover Messe in Germany for advanced industries and things like that. A lot of times OEDIT will have a statewide booth with multiple companies in the same booth representing Colorado. So there are a lot of opportunities to take advantage through that and also be branding your company, not only as made in the USA, but made in Colorado, getting out to the world. And then, so Suzette, I'd like to kick it over to you. If you talk about any types of funding programs or potentially lack of funding programs that your organization may or may not have.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Well, I think the first thing that I would mention is Department of Commerce, through our sister agency, Economic Development Agency, has funded local communities in the billions of dollars in the past year or so, especially since the pandemic. So EDA, Economic Development Agency, is actually awarded a grant to the World Trade Center in part to support their global trade activator program. So I think, again, that just ties kind of the whole resource community here together. So kind of important to highlight. Kind of how we approach, we don't have any direct grants that we give from our office. We do in, kind of pre-COVID times, we would do things like secure a USA pavilion at a major trade show, and then sublet those booths to companies to make it affordable for them, so they didn't have to spend $10,000 to go to a trade show. They could maybe get a space in the booth for $1,500 or $2,000, thus making it very, much more affordable. So there's a lot of opportunities like that. The other really kind of key thing we do, just a couple quick examples, is as we're talking to companies about what their strategy is and their goals, we would refer them to talk to Patty about getting an export working capital loan, or talked to Sophia about STEP grants, and if they're eligible, and we would help them prepare the market research component so that they're putting forth a good proposal to get grant funding. So I think that that's just, kind of indirect ways that we support other people. And then of course, through the EDA grants that the Department of Commerce has given to a lot of local communities. So.
Awesome. Well, that was good. That's obviously there's a lot of capital programs out there, funding programs. If you believe that you have an exporting will, there's certainly a way to make that happen. So I'll just wait just a second, see if there may be any questions from the group specific to the different type of funding programs that exist. I'm not seeing any.
Steve, if I could just add really quickly too, I had just sent this, update to my staff here this morning. The other thing that we do is, it's not directly an export grant, but for example, the SBDC sent out a newsletter today highlighting all of the grants that are available for Colorado companies. So, there's everything from advanced industry grants to opportunity zone, accelerator programs. There's a grant for employee ownership to transfer ownership to employees. There's all types of programs out there. And, some of what we do is make sure that our Colorado companies are aware of all the grants that are available, because if they can get money to do something domestically, then that frees up some of their revenue for an international activity. So that's also part of what we do, even though it's not a direct, international grant or international finance opportunity. And of course, Patty's really good at that as well. So.
And that was a really great plug for me, because you mentioned the term SBDC. And so everyone knows what that is. That is a small business development center. We have 15 of them across the state that they are overseen by the Office of Economic Development and International Trade. And they are kind of the front door for small businesses. So if you are in need of any of those SBDC items, you can obviously connect with Sophia. I'd be more than happy to facilitate that for you. As you can see, we all kind of work in tandem. Well, we're coming up toward the end. And so we're going to go through one quick kind of lightning round thing. And we're going to start with Sophia. And looks like we may have a question there from Cortez. How small or big does your company have to be before going global? I launched a protein water company in 2019, selling out nationwide in just 6 days. In 2020, earning over $500,000, which is great. Congratulations on that, by the way. We're very fortunate, and a lot of this is due to professional athletes posting and raving about our product, so kind of going social. So question for the entire panel. How small or big does that company have to be before going into international markets?
I'm happy to start with this one. Cortez, thank you so much for that question. I think it's a great question. And I think, Steve, it's also weaving that the key takeaways, I think, is start now, start building your confidence, start building the network. So even if you're maybe not ready yet, I think it's a good time to start building the community and knowledge around about how to do global trade. Because one thing that we always hear that it does take longer, it does take a little bit of time to build this connection, to build understanding of what comes first. You never know where will be this little roadblocks or things like this. So I would say start sooner rather than later.
Okay, and as we go around the panel, if we can make sure that Cortez, you'll get some contact information for folks here, and I'm sure they'd be more than happy to talk to you about that and counsel you going forward. Sophia, I'll go back to you. What's a key takeaway that you would say for exporting before we end the call?
I would say, like we mentioned, research. I think it's important to come in knowing at least what path you think your company would like to take. And second of all, I would say putting yourself out there once you've done that research. I think it's important to just talk to somebody. If you reach out to Patty or to Suzette or to Tanya or to me, it doesn't matter. We're all connected, as Suzette mentioned earlier. So just put yourself out there and we'll, try to connect you to the right people.
Patty, what is a key takeaway for you from an exporting standpoint before the call in?
This is a continuing process. So you may see me in October, and then you'll see me again for the next few months. But this isn't something where it's a one-time shot. We're going to be working together probably for the next few years. I was working with a small business last October. We finally got their financing approved, and now we're working on some other issues. So this is a process. We become almost your adjunct board. We are your board to come to with any questions whatsoever.
Okay, and Suzette, who's that way. Suzette?
Yeah, so that's a good segue from Patty. Have an international business plan, and you have to think through. Most companies have a business plan, but they don't realize there are some significant nuances to doing international business. It can be done. It takes twice as long and can cost twice as much money and take you twice as long to get paid. So you have to have a contingency for, those variables, and you have to have a budget. So make the plan so that you can work towards fulfilling, kind of each of those, and we can help you do that. So.
And I'll leave folks on this note, as someone that's worked with many exporters. I've had an opportunity to work with Suzette for many years. And the word I like to use is perseverance. If things can be challenging when you first try to get into global markets and you get into the international markets, but continue to stick with it. All the people on this panel are dedicated to your success. And frankly, exporting is kind of fun. I mean, to really go from a different standpoint, it can be a very, very enjoyable experience when you begin to build relationships with distributors overseas. And then all of a sudden, made in the USA, that product or that service is being used in a different country. And then the word starts to get out about your product. And then it begins to go from there. And then all of a sudden you're into the issue of, holy cow, can I scale my business? Because I've got all this demand that's all of a sudden coming in. When we talk about 95% of the world's purchasing power being outside the borders of the United States, it truly is real. And you never know if you have the next big idea or product or service, and it kicks off like wildfire. And we want to see that. So everyone here is very happy to support your success. And for those folks that do want to get into the international markets, you are only limited by your imagination, and I'll put it that way. So any last comments or questions from our attendees today? And if not, of course, you'll have our contact information. You're more than happy to follow up with us. Not seeing any, but I just want to thank everyone for attending today. I want to thank our panelists for all the expertise that you bring to the table on this topic. And we do appreciate everyone and your time. And we will wish you a wonderful weekend at that point. So have a good day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve.